going on, everybody? Welcome back to my random horror review series. I am your host, Mood616, and thank you once again for stopping in, guys. Yes, I know it has been probably 3, maybe 4 years since I did a review on this random horror review series, but nevertheless, I'm back, and we've got one here today, a film that I've never actually seen before. I've always known about this one. I remember seeing the VHS around back in the day, and for whatever reasons, never rented it, never bought it. I don't know why, because this movie right here most definitely combines two of my favorite genres, which is westerns and horror. And it's just amazing to me that this movie was lost in obscurity for so long, and the other fact that I never saw it, which is very odd too. But it's a film from 1987, and it is called Ghost Riders. Look at that new custom artwork, which is actually pretty cool, and that's been a problem with a lot of releases from a lot of these big boutique companies these days, is that they don't really do the greatest, new custom artwork. But this is pretty cool. I actually kind of like this better than the original artwork on the VHS, but it's actually kind of a shame that the Ghost Riders actually don't look like this in the movie, but hey, it is what it is. I mean, the artwork never really represents the movie properly now, does it? That's kind of the fun of 80s films. So yes, Ghost Riders from 1987. So basically the synopsis of this movie is the movie opens up in the late 1880s, and there's basically this mob, and they've captured this super famous outlaw and his gang and stuff like that. The thing is, it's not really fully warranted. The sheriff is trying to actually kind of stop this hanging. Lo and behold, this outlaw by the name of Frank Clemens ends up getting hung, and of course his last words are something along the lines to the hangman is, I'm gonna come back and basically haunt you and kill you and all your descendants and stuff like that. So it's one of those kind of evil will prevail type movies. So jump forward 100 years later to the late 1980s, and it follows our main character Hampton, who's like an ex Vietnam vet and stuff like that. He meets this girl named Sam, and it turns out that Hampton's father is actually like a very famous Texan historian and stuff like that. And he meets this girl named Sam, who happens to be into history herself. They get together with a couple friends, and they decide they're going to go see his father. But what they don't know is that it's the 100th anniversary of the lynching of the famous outlaw and his gang, and they are back for revenge. And of course, as soon as they get there, shit starts hitting the fan. Now, that is the synopsis on the film. Now, my thoughts on this one. This is a very ambitious movie. For being super low budget, it's a regional film. It takes place in Texas. It was shot in Texas, shot on 60mm. They basically made this movie from what they had access to. I did watch actually one of the documentaries on here, and it explains like how they did it and stuff, and it's actually really damn cool. The film opens up with this great scene in of course, in the late 1880s, and there's a bunch of shooting and it's just a big shootout and stuff like that. It's very ambitious. It's pretty awesome too. And they talk about in the special features about the squibs that they use and shit like that. And there's lots of people getting shot, lots of blood and stuff like that. The movie's not overly gory. It's just a lot of shooting because they're outlaws. But yeah, the opening scene, I was like, wow, it's very, very ambitious for what they did. And I learned that pretty much everybody in that opening scene actually they were kind of like those stage actors in an abandoned Western kind of village thing, and they do those plays and stuff like that. So everybody already had their own costumes and stuff, so they didn't even have to pay for all this. So everything was like very authentic looking. I thought that was kind of cool and unique that they did that. But yeah, so the opening scene is really cool. The movie does slow down a little bit once they get to the father's place. They discover that the father is actually, he's been hurt by the outlaws and stuff like that, and so basically the whole movie is them running away from this outlaw gang and stuff. It's actually pretty cool though. It's pretty well done. I gotta say though, for it being shot on 60mm, looks pretty good. Now the transfer on the movie definitely shows its limitations. Even the movie itself has its limitations because of the budget constraints and things like that. So what you're gonna get here for transfer wise isn't like overly scratchy, nothing. It's a little dull at times. But I think the worst thing about the actual transfer is the dialogue audio track. It's not really the greatest. It's very, very low. You have to really turn it up, and then when the score kicks in, and the soundtrack and things like that, even it gets very loud at times. So the audio track is a little bit off on this and stuff, but But yeah, that's probably about the worst thing about the movie. But I gotta say, man, for a film that was filled with basically non-actors and people that have done just very little movie acting, it's pretty solid. The acting was actually not bad, especially the girl that plays Sam in this. I thought she was very good. It was the very first thing she ever done in her career. I thought she did a pretty good job. But overall, I really like the premise of the movie. I always like these kind of revenge tales where people come back and things like that. One of the most unique things about the outlaw gang coming back is that they come back as like flesh and blood. They're not, it's supposed to be a ghost story. See, the idea behind this movie was they wanted to mash up westerns and horror because they weren't really making a lot of these movies, and especially at the time they weren't even making westerns. So they wanted to do something a little different, and so they mashed up a ghost story with westerns. And I really like how it turned out because they come back as flesh and blood. So at the beginning of the film, we get a couple of the outlaws get shot, and we're like, holy shit, man, they're getting picked off one by one here very quickly. But then there's another scene where all 5 of them are, in a shot, and I'm like, okay, so these guys are coming back and shit like that, but they're bleeding. They can be killed in one specific way. I won't give it away, but I think that idea was actually pretty cool. It's not really fully explained, like even how they come back and things like that, but it doesn't really matter. We're watching a Western horror film. It doesn't really matter at all. So, I thought it was pretty cool, man. The bad guys don't have like any dialogue in the movie, I believe, when they come back and shit. So they're just kind of like these walking, I wouldn't say zombies because they're not like your typical voodoo or flesh-eating zombies, but they're not very ghostly. Even though they can do ghostly things, they bleed blood and they can die. So it's an interesting premise. I thought that was really cool. Now, the music in the film, I feel like this movie really could have been flushed out with a better score. They talk about the score. The score at times is decent. I feel like they just don't use it enough. They probably could have used it a little bit more to build a little bit more suspense in certain scenes and stuff like that. Not much of a soundtrack, but the score is, it's here and there and stuff, but I felt like it was just kind of lacking in certain points. I'm glad that they didn't use like a very silly type score and shit like that to make it kind of comical and shit. So, it's decent sounding, but I feel like there's a lack of filling out the film from a really good score because they're on the run. They're being chased by these guys and shit. So, but yeah, like I said, it's kind of a shame that they don't look like this. This would have been virtually very hard to do with the budget constraints that they actually had and stuff. I gotta say though, man, for a regional low budget film shot on 60mm, very obscure, this thing actually has a lot of fucking features on here, man. So we got an audio commentary with Thomas Callahan, the writer producer of the film, with the moderator Steve Latshaw, who is actually a director himself. Bringing out the ghosts, making the Ghost Riders, the original documentary. I didn't watch that one, but I watched the new documentary on here. It's on the set of Ghost Riders, the vintage documentary. That was the one I didn't watch. The making of Ghost Riders with the writer and DP. Yeah, the guy that he shot Creepazoids and a bunch of shit after that, which is very informative. They give you a lot of like really good insight into the film, and it really kind of puts a perspective on low budget filmmaking, like real low budget filmmaking, because the movie looks a lot bigger than it actually is. They did some really cool things, especially with this plane where they had access to this plane. They just strapped some cameras to it. They did some tricks and shit. I thought that was really cool. Didn't really have to pay anything. You did it all for free. It's got movie stills, behind the scenes photo gallery, original theater, new reissue trailer too, which is cool, man. That's a lot of features for a film that's pretty much unheard of. A lot of people are probably checking this out for the first time, like myself, which again, I still think is totally bizarre. I'd never seen this movie before. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of really interesting things. I think the guy that plays Hampton, the lead character, he's the Vietnam vet. I think he does a really good job in this movie. I think he was kind of the most well-known person in this, even though he wasn't really that well-known. But anyways, I digress. Very fun film. If you're into Westerns, if you're into horror films, if you like the mashup, I highly recommend this one. This would be a really cool feature with Ghost Town, actually. Ghost Town, which was done by Prism also. Was this put out by Prism? Something like that, I think. I can't remember. There's some type of, it's Vertigo Entertainment. Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, Ghost Town, which was like a prison film done by Charles Band back in 1988, would be a cool double feature right here. But I really like these regional films. It's got a great Texan atmosphere and setting and shit like that. So you can't really go wrong. It does. You can see a lot of influences from certain westerns and things like that. But it's definitely its own thing. So Ghost Riders from 1987. I recommend this. But like I said, don't expect this thing to look crystal clear on Blu-ray. But the transfer's not bad. Like I said, it's just the audio track that's a little bit you know, kind of low at times and things like that. So that was kind of my biggest gripe with the film. But if I had to rate this one, I'm going to give it a solid 6.5 out of 10. It's nothing mind-blowing. It's way above average, especially for like the budget and stuff, but I recommend this, and especially the release. The features are, you know, probably to some people will be, you know, even more interesting than the movie, especially if you're not into these, you know, Western films, but the features are really cool. So yes, Ghost Riders from 1987 from MVD Visual. Good job on this one. So very, very happy with that release. And, yeah, that is going to do it for this review. I don't know when I'll be back with one of these because this was just kind of randomly sent to me by MVD. I never even I haven't had anything from MVD in 6-7 years. Like, I didn't even request it. They just sent it to me. Very odd. So I was like, shit. Gives me a chance to resurrect the Random Horror Review series to do a review for y'all. So that is going to conclude the review. Maybe I'll just do some other random ones. This is actually kind of fun because it took me so long to set up in here, because if you guys know my other setup, I had a different TV I used to set up on the angle. I couldn't figure out how to get the angle properly because my TV's like 75 inches. So I just said, fuck it, I'll zoom in and make the background, or the you know, the TV menu my actual background. So hope you guys are digging. Hopefully it even looks good or sounds good. I don't know. But let me know what you guys thought of the review, and I'll check you guys in the next one. And as usual, news